entonces continuando con nuestra programación, les queremos contar que en nuestra conferencia de clausura contamos con la presentación de una referente mundial. Es Judy Singer, reconocida por acuñar el concepto de neurodiversidad en el 1998 y proponerlo como una nueva categoría interseccional, como un potencial nombre para el crecimiento de los movimientos sociales que luchan por la reivindicación de los derechos humanos de las personas neurodivergentes. Ella nos trae la conferencia ¿Qué es la neurodiversidad y el movimiento de la neurodiversidad? Evolución, tensiones y giros. Recordad que para el acceso de todos y todas a la información contaremos con traducción simultánea. Bienvenida, Judy Singer.
Judy, are you there? There you are. Mm-hmm. I'm going to turn on my camera too so that you can see me when I'm interpreting. So we're together, okay?
Okay.
Okay. They have already introduced you. So I don't know if you want to introduce yourself or that, and after that I can start asking the questions.
No, because I don't know what they said, so I don't want to repeat anything.
Okay. They said that you were a worldwide...
just my biography that I gave you.
They said that you had coined the concept of neurodivergence and that you were a worldwide expert, and so that we were very honored to have you.
Good. Okay, great. Tell me when we're going. And I also want to share my screen, so.
¿Ya quiere compartir su pantalla? Go ahead.
We're on?
No.
You'll tell me that say 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes. Do you want me to start with the first question?
Well, no, I will just quickly respond to I'll just thank them for the introduction, even though I don't know what they said, but I'm sure it was very nice. So.
I hope that it would be better if you introduce yourself from your point of view.
Well, I'm going to introduce myself through your question, but I will no. So what I will do is I will just say thank you for that introduction, and then I'll say my little thing about Chile has a special place in my heart because blah blah. And now
we're here. Okay, go ahead.
All right, good. So I need a drink quick. Sorry, where's my drink? All right. Okay. Well, bombs away. Let's go.
All right, so I'll start asking you. I'm going to explain that I'm going to ask the questions and I'm going to read them because I'm going to translate them. Vamos a empezar a través de unas preguntas que teníamos preparadas, en las cuales yo les voy a hacer la pregunta en español y ella la va a contestar y después yo voy a hacer la interpretación consecutiva, ¿sí? Entonces, la primera pregunta dice, la tesis por la cual ha llegado a ser conocida se subtitula Una exploración personal de un movimiento social nuevo que se basa en la diversidad neurológica. ¿Qué fue de tu experiencia personal que conllevó a estas ideas? Okay, Judy, I have asked the first question, so bombs away.
But I want to say something first before you
ask.
Okay, so on 3, I will say thank you and my chili and all that, and then you ask your question, all right? Then I'll stop, and then you translate. Okay.
So go ahead and say your thank you bit because we are on the air.
Well, thank you for that introduction. I didn't quite understand it, but I'm sure it was very kind and nice. Before I start, I just want to say that I have a special connection to Chile. Back in the 1970s, when the coup happened, I was at university and very left-wing, as I hope I still am. And all of Australia was horrified at what happened. You know, it was a huge shock and there was a lot of activism about it. And then, you know, a lot of Chilean exiles started to come, and some of them were brilliant musicians, and they started La Peña, which I think you know what La Peña means. And I went every week for years, and I learned so much about South American culture and your amazing art and music. So I'm so excited and glad to be here. Thank you.
Bueno, primero que todo agradece por la introducción, que no la entendió porque estaba en español, pero que está seguro de que era muy bondadosa, y quería explicar que tiene una conexión muy especial con Chile, porque hace muchos años, en los años 70, cuando fue el golpe de Estado acá en Chile, que ella era una persona muy de izquierda, que todavía lo sigue siendo. En Australia estaban horrorizados con lo que estaba pasando acá. Y en ese momento llegaron muchos exiliados a Australia, y entre ellos habían músicos muy brillantes, y establecieron una especie de una peña, que se llamaba La Peña, y que ella fue por años a La Peña, todas las semanas, y ahí supo mucho y conoció mucho sobre la cultura sudamericana, e hizo muchos amigos de acá. Por lo tanto, está muy emocionada de hablar con nosotros. Mm-hmm.
So, well, let's begin. I'm going to share my screen and share. Oh dear, just a moment. I've been so prepared, and now at the last minute I haven't.
Empecemos, voy a compartir la pantalla que está ahí tratando de compartirla. Estaba súper preparada y ahora no me resulta.
Oh, I can't.
Well, if you can't
okay,
open it.
I've got it. Share and slideshow. Play from start.
There it is.
So there it is. And I'm going to begin with, you did ask your question, didn't you, in Spanish?
I did. You want me to ask it in English?
No, it's all right, because this is rigged. Just tell people this is rigged. We already agreed what the questions would be.
I told you.
So I'm going to begin with my background and my personal experience. So sorry about the teething problems. So, this is me. This is how I identified as I said, being in the middle, not in the middle of the photo. That's me on the left, my mother and my daughter, 3 generations of women on the autistic spectrum. I don't identify as that anymore, in the sense that my mother and my daughter are more pronouncedly autistic. I have autistic traits, but thanks to the neurodiversity movement, I've realized that I have other traits as well, and they are, sorry, I was just a bit distracted by where you are, so I've just found you. I'll settle down in a minute. I'm going to move you so you're in the middle, and then I can talk to you. And so that's better. So because of the neurodiversity movement, I realized that I have autistic traits, but I also have ADHD traits, and I also have dyspraxic traits. And dyspraxia was probably, which is clumsiness, basically, bad coordination, poor at sport. So now I just identify as neurodivergent. So my early life was marked really by outsiderhood. From the very first memories are always of me being on the outside looking at other children who were younger than me doing things I couldn't do, and me wondering, how do they know who they are and what they are? How are they so confident? And I just had this feeling of fate that I was never quite going to belong. And then I was also, what happened next was, I should have said that I was born in Hungary. And actually, I'll give you a chance to translate.
Okay, okay. Primero voy a empezar con un poco de antecedentes sobre mí, un poco de mi experiencia personal. Aquí es como puede ser esta primera diapositiva de cómo me identifico a mí misma. Como pueden ver, hay 3 generaciones en el espectro autista. Ya no me identifico de esa forma, porque yo estoy en el medio, no en el medio de la foto, porque yo soy la del lado izquierdo de la foto. Al ver de los que están mirando, mi mamá es la que está en el medio y al lado está mi hija. Somos 3 generaciones de mujeres en el espectro autista. Yo tengo tendencias o rasgos autistas, pero gracias al movimiento me he dado cuenta de que también tengo otros rasgos, como por ejemplo de ADHD, que es de desorden atencional, déficit atencional, también dislexia, por ejemplo, que tiene que ver con la coordinación a veces un poco, y ahora me identifico como neurodivergente gracias a este movimiento. Finalmente, desde siempre mis recuerdos son que yo estaba afuera, mirando cómo los otros niños hacían cosas, cómo jugaban, y me preguntaba a mí misma, ¿cómo saben quiénes son? ¿Cómo saben qué son? Y que estaban integrados. Hasta ahí llegó, después me dio oportunidad de interpretar. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Just to correct you, I don't have dyslexia. I have...
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Dyslexia is like, I was born reading. I'm the opposite of dyslexia.
What was you mentioned something and I didn't hear it properly.
Okay, dyspraxia.
Dyspraxia, pero un problema al escucharlo. Que tiene que ver con la coordinación.
Yeah, that's right. So good. So I should have begun by saying that I was born in Hungary in 1951. We came to Australia during the Hungarian Revolution. We came to Australia seeking amnesty. I was 5 years old. It was very traumatic. It's nowhere near what refugees go through today, so I can only imagine what they go through. But even for me, it was terrible, even though we were welcomed here. So I just want to say that my ideas, as we will return to later, about neurodiversity have always been about intersectionality. Even before, I didn't know that word, but it was always about the intersections of class and race and all that.
Bueno, debía empezar diciendo que yo nací en Hungría en el año 1951. Nosotros nos fuimos a Australia en busca de amnistía después de la Revolución Húngara. Aparentemente no fue tan terrible como la situación actual de los refugiados, pero aún así fue una situación muy fuerte. Y luego presento el concepto de interseccionalidad, del cual ahora va a elaborar. Go ahead.
Thank you. So we came here as refugees, and it was traumatic. Sorry if I repeat myself. I will get used to this. And I wanted to say that we're also Jewish, and my mother survived the Auschwitz concentration camp as a teenager. And so when I say that she's autistic, it is quite possible that this was a result of trauma, and that trauma was generated through the family. There was a lot of grief and pain and suffering. And from my point of view, intersectionality, we had it all. I mean, first of all, in the 50s and 60s, gender, terrible sexism, socioeconomic class. My father never got a good, he was always the last person to be hired, so, and the first person to be fired. So we were always poor. Obviously, my disability, which I didn't know about, the whole family was traumatized. The only thing I had was white skin, but even that was a problem because I was too white. And in an outdoors country, you know, I was considered strange because of that. And I was considered strange anyway because of my autistic traits.
Nosotros vinimos a Australia como refugiados, disculpen que me repita a mí misma, que fue una situación traumática. Ya me voy a acostumbrar, dijo entre medio, porque le cuesta un poco concentrarse acá. También, aparte de eso, éramos judíos. Mi mamá sobrevivió en su etapa de adolescente, sobrevivió el Holocausto en el campo de concentración de Auschwitz. Puede haber resultado finalmente que es muy probable que su autismo tenía más bien relación con esta situación traumática. Entonces lo teníamos todo en términos de interseccionalidad. Había mucho sexismo en esa época. Mi papá era la última persona que contrataban y a la primera que despedían por todas estas características de migrantes, qué sé yo. Por lo tanto, siempre éramos pobres. Yo además tenía esta supuesta discapacidad. Lo único que tenía a mi favor era que era blanca, pero incluso eso era un poco, iba un poco en contra, porque Australia es un país en el que se vive afuera, se vive al exterior, y no es tan común que yo sea alguien como yo tan blanca, y era rara por mi condición.
Thank you. And finally, my ideas basically come through my mother, because from childhood I thought there is something strange and different about my mother. It's almost as if she comes from a different universe and I couldn't understand it. And so, you know, to add to her problems, which were obviously post-traumatic stress as well, not being able to get jobs because she was considered too strange. And also, I just want to refer back to what Nick Walker said about cosmopolitan and versus provincial. And I had such a big aha moment, because that is exactly what happened. We came from a very sophisticated European cosmopolitan culture, and we moved to this, what we thought was a tropical hellhole called Queensland. And for my mother, it was totally provincial, very right-wing, and my mother could not make friends there. So we were just total outsiders. And this is what shaped my life. And finally, when my parents were communists, naive communists, and I'm also very left-wing, although not a communist, then that is probably enough, more than enough about me.
Finalmente, todas estas ideas mías surgieron un poco de la observación o de la compañía de mi madre, porque cuando era niña sentía que ella venía casi de otro universo, su forma de ser. Ella, aparte, tenía estrés postraumático adicionalmente, no podía conseguir trabajo por su condición, porque la encontraban extraña. Y cuando Nick habló de este tema, me hizo mucho sentido el tema de ser neurocosmopolita. Me hizo mucho sentido porque nosotros básicamente nos fuimos de un lugar que era más bien cosmopolita a un lugar que era como, en inglés se dice como un hoyo del infierno, que era Queensland, right?
Yeah.
En Australia, y que era muy cosmoprovinciano, que era todo lo contrario. Entonces nosotros éramos extranjeros, foráneos, y eso dio forma a mi vida de alguna manera. Mis papás eran comunistas, además, muy de izquierda. Yo también siempre he sido de izquierda, aunque no comunista, y bueno, supongo que eso es suficiente de mi vida. Go ahead.
Thank you. And I forgot to add the most important thing, which was that with my mother, I thought I didn't understand her. When I was old enough, I went to all the psychiatric textbooks to find out there's something wrong here. What's wrong? I couldn't find anything. So I came to the conclusion that she was just a bad, lazy, stupid person. And then when I had my daughter, she was a baby. I could already see she was like my mother. And that's when I realized, oh, this is not a moral problem. This is a genetic problem, a hereditary problem that's in my family. And I've got traits like that too. But there was no Asperger's syndrome. There was only classic autism. I looked up autism and my heart froze because it's like my daughter, except my daughter is so loving that it couldn't be classic. It couldn't be autism. But what were we? And it took another 9 years for me to discover that there was actually an hereditary condition called autism. And when I went back to university to study this phenomenon in sociology, and that's where my work comes from, because my thesis was subtitled it was subtitled A Personal Exploration of a New
I have the name here.
Oh, you have? Okay. What's happened is that I've just lost my screen. And
we can wait.
I have to
Judy, may I ask you a couple of clarifications? So when you look for the information about your mom, you only found the classic autism. This is the only concept that was found at the moment.
What was it? Well, no, I found nothing because she didn't fit autism. Mm-hmm. Not the way classic autism can't, the really severe symptoms. My mother was a very intelligent woman. She had great linguistic skills. There was nothing about my mother. That's why I thought, well, if it's not a medical condition, it's a moral problem.
Okay. And then when you went to the university, you studied sociology?
Mm-hmm. Okay. To try to understand, and part of it was I found disability studies, and that changed my life because I began to understand about oppression and how society, and of course, I'm sure everyone here has heard about the social model versus the medical model of disability, if that has been discussed. And all I knew was the medical model. And when I discovered the social model, which is that society also constructs disability, it just changed my life.
Okay. Había olvidado agregar que con mi mamá, bueno, yo no la entendía, buscaba información y nunca encontré nada, no había nada con respecto ni siquiera a autismo. Entonces llegué a la conclusión en algún momento de que era una persona mala, floja, tonta, porque no encontré nada que me explicara su conducta. Y cuando tuve una hija, me di cuenta inmediatamente de que algo era distinto y me di cuenta de que no era un tema moral, sino un tema genético. Y que lo que sí no calzaba, porque ella es extremadamente amorosa, mi hija. De la misma manera, mi mamá era tremendamente dotada en el área lingüística, una mujer inteligente. Y así, bueno, no encontré nada cuando nació mi hija, pasaron 9 años más, en las que finalmente fui a la universidad para estudiar sociología, en parte como tratando de entender estas condiciones, y mi tesis, que aquí voy a buscar el nombre porque lo tengo, se llamaba Una exploración personal del nuevo movimiento social basado en la diversidad neurológica. Y aquí fue como que empecé a entender cosas y fue para mí, abrió mis ojos porque, no sé si acá lo mencionaron en alguna parte de las presentaciones, el tema de que existe un modelo médico para medir las discapacidades o las condiciones, y que existe también un modelo social en el cual la sociedad forma estas conductas, y eso para mí fue algo que abrió mi universo. Okay, Judy, go ahead.
Okay, that's, do you have another question?
I do. Vamos a la segunda pregunta, que dice, cuando por primera vez usted ocupó la palabra neurodiversidad, ¿qué significó para ti? ¿Has pensado en cambiarla desde entonces? Go ahead, the one about you thinking about changing the concept.
Yeah. So when I first used the word, what did it mean to me? Not a lot. I didn't think it was a big deal. It was just one idea in my thesis, which is what I was really proud of, because it was the first work to actually analyze the growth of this new social movement. And sorry about that. So this is all that I wrote about neurodiversity. The significance of the autistic spectrum lies in its anticipation of a politics of neurodiversity. And the neurological different represent a new addition to the political categories of class, gender, and race. So in other words, for me, neurodiversity was a political term for use to add to intersectionality, basically. I didn't even think about what does it really mean. I just knew that that it was a really catchy buzzword that suited the times, and the meaning of it seemed really obvious to me. And but it turns out that it was not. It was equally obvious to other people, but in a different way, which I think is not correct.
Cuando usé la palabra, el concepto de neurodiversidad por primera vez, no lo encontré para tanto. Era una idea más de mi tesis, pero me sentí orgullosa porque era el comienzo de un nuevo movimiento. Y esto que ven aquí es todo lo que escribí básicamente. Lo que ven en este slide, que dice que el significado del espectro autista yace en la anticipación de las políticas de la neurodiversidad. La diferencia, aquellos que son diferentes neurológicamente representan una nueva adición a las categorías de clase, políticas, de género y de raza. Esto es todo lo que escribí para agregarlo de cierta manera al concepto de interseccionalidad. Y solo sabía que era una palabra, ella ocupada, dice muy catchy, muy que sonaba muy bien, que era atractiva, y que me parecía muy obvio su significado, pero después me di cuenta de que ese significado era muy obvio también para otros de otra forma, y eso no estaba bien, no era lo que yo quería. Okay, go ahead.
So I just want to take a little detour to tell you that language is very important to me, and I'm a bit of a dragon guarding the treasure of what neurodiversity means to me. And I understand that ideas evolve and that words evolve in language, and all I can do is put my version of it, which I think is helpful and not harmful, which I will move to now.
I'll interpret that. Solo quería decir que tomarme un momentito para hacer un pequeño desvío y explicarles de que para mí el lenguaje es muy importante. Entiendo que el lenguaje evoluciona y por eso lo único que puedo hacer al respecto es expresarles lo que significa para mí el concepto desde su inicio, o sea, lo que es el significado que tiene para mí. Okay, Judy.
And I think there are actually two types of people, and this is a big controversy always in neurodiversity. One lot says, forget the language, just do it. You know, the work is important, just go ahead and do it. And then there's those of us who think that language matters. And I can rest on very ancient authority for this, and that's where the Chinese philosopher comes in. One of the things he said, which is it's called the rectification of names, and it's really about when he was asked what is the most important thing a government can do, and he replied, get the names correct. If the names are not correct, language is not in accordance with the truth of things. If language is not in accordance with the truth of things, affairs cannot be carried to success. And I think this really applies. If you don't realize that neurodiversity is a political term, but think it's a disability, it's a name for a disability, the whole focus changes. And I will talk about that later.
One second. Bueno, yo siento que hay dos tipos de personas en esta área, digamos, algunos que dicen, olvídate del lenguaje, no importa, y hagamos el trabajo que hay que hacer. Ya vemos otras que pensamos que el lenguaje realmente importa. Y para sustentar esta creencia, quiero apoyarme en el estudio de tantos años, y en este caso en los chinos, que podemos ver aquí esta frase de Confucio en el que habla de la rectificación de los nombres. Y la frase lee, o la declaración lee de que si los nombres no son los correctos, el lenguaje no está de acuerdo con la verdad de las cosas. Si el lenguaje no va alineado o no está de acuerdo con la verdad de las cosas, los asuntos no pueden llevarse a cabo de manera exitosa. Y yo siento que esto realmente aplica, porque si ven este tema como si no aceptan o no están de acuerdo en que la neurodivergencia es un nombre político y no una discapacidad, entonces se están mirando un prisma absolutamente distinto. Go ahead.
Thank you. Now, I think I already know what your next question is, so I think I've started to answer it already, so you don't have to ask it. Okay. So I'll just get on to what I think neurodiversity is. And by the way, how am I going for time? Because I think I may have taken too long and I've got a lot to get through.
Organizadores, ¿cómo estamos de tiempo?
Marité, aún tenemos 20 minutos más.
We still have 20 minutes, Judy.
Okay, well, so I've got to get through a lot. Let's move then. So neurodiversity is based on biodiversity. Biodiversity is a biopolitical term. It was coined in the 1980s as an argument for why the Green Movement must fight for a diverse ecosystem, because a more diverse ecosystem is more sustainable. And so I thought this was, so, you know, on analysing it later, which I don't think I particularly thought about it, I was relying on the idea that the more diverse a culture is, the more sustainable it is, because there's more roles, there's more creativity, and there's more justice. I don't have to add too much to that, because I think it's already been said in many ways. So, but what is important to me is that neurodiversity is not So I've gone, sorry, this is too sensitive, this computer. So neurodiversity is not neurological disability, and people keep using that. And I think one of the problems is, and I will be talking about big business taking over the movement in many ways. They started using it because it's easy for them to talk about neurodiverse people, or we have that neurodiversity refers to the neurological others. So I don't like terms like people with neurodiversity. Someone said to me recently that I was going to talk at an event about my neurodiversity. I don't have neurodiversity. I have various different traits. Or I wouldn't say a person is neurodiverse, because diversity refers to a location. Diversity is a measure of the degree of variation in an ecosystem, and it cannot apply to a personality or an individual. Over to you.
Okay. En la diapositiva anterior estaba la declaración de que la neurodiversidad se basaba de cierta manera también en el tema alguna vez introducido o tiene relación con el tema alguna vez presentado de la ecodiversidad. En ese tiempo, en los 80, ese concepto de ecodiversidad se aunó, se creó, porque el movimiento pensaba en ese momento que había que luchar por la diversidad del ecosistema, porque eso hacía que fuera más sustentable, porque había más diversidad. Bueno, y esto ya se habló en varias partes de la presentación, estoy segura, pero solo quiero acotar que es lo mismo en el tema de la neurodiversidad, en términos de lo positivo y de la sustentabilidad. Mientras más diverso, más sustentable. Ahora en esta diapositiva digo que la neurodiversidad no es una discapacidad neurológica. Se empezó a utilizar este concepto, que es un concepto político, porque es fácil hablar de los otros, los que tienen aquellos de la neurodiversidad. No me gusta que se utilice el decir él es neurodiverso o la gente con neurodiversidad, porque la neurodiversidad no es una característica de esa forma, sino que es una medida del grado de diferencia en este caso. Go ahead, Judy.
And here's the second issue that I find very disturbing. This is a definition. This is a really common definition. People found this on Wikipedia, which is just not, it's just rubbish, okay? And it keeps repeating all over the world. This is in Psychology Today. Neurodiversity refers to the idea that neurological differences reflect normal variations in brain development. And this one is from a book which you may know, Neurodiversity, from Phenomena. It's too complicated, but and this is his definition. This is Dr. Lawrence Fung, who's a professor at Stanford University. Neurodiversity regards differences in brain function and behavior as part of the normal variation of the human population. Now, for me, this is just dreadful. Oh, I'm missing something there, so I'll go back. The idea of normal, there's no place for words like normal and natural in a neurodiversity discourse. And I want to warn you that nature is amoral and not benign. Indeed, neurodiversity includes the dark triad, which is psychopathy, narcissism, sadism, and we have to be mindful of that. It's humans who are moral, so it is our moral obligation to create niches to accommodate everyone. And people are now talking here about toxic positivism, which is I think, a function of, I haven't talked much about capitalism, but I just think, our culture is falling to pieces. And I think people, I don't know if it's the same in Latin America. Hopefully you are more realistic than we are. But this kind of, toxic positivism is not helpful. And because some of the niches will have to be, yes, the niches are positive, if someone's disabled, they also fulfill a role. All the helping professions, of course, but sometimes when we've got dark triad, the niche is protective custody, and to me, or jail, and to me, that is a very big issue for neurodiversity, and that we have to reform the justice system. and make jails more humane and less punitive. And I know that people in England are working on it, particularly my friends in Genius Within company, who are doing a lot of work in changing jail culture. And apparently a huge percentage of people in jail are autistic, ADHD, or ADHD.
I'm going to interpret that, okay? What is the name of the entity where your friends are working on for the jail?
This is they're called Genius Within.
Okay, Genius Within.
It's a company well-known company in UK.
Okay. Bueno, en las otras diapositivas estaba en relación a las previas que había mostrado, estaba diciendo de que hay un segundo tema que me parece muy perturbador. Las personas, una definición que se encontraba en Wikipedia, a mí me parece que es basura. La neurodiversidad, decía la diapositiva, se refiere a la idea de que la diferencia neurológica se refleja en variaciones de lo normal en términos del desarrollo del cerebro. Y luego definiciones del doctor Lawrence, en el cual decía que la neurodiversidad también tenía que ver con la diferencia, y hablaba de lo que era normal un poco, y a ella le parece, a mí me parece que es atroz, porque no debería haber espacio para la palabra normal y natural en un discurso de neurodiversidad. La naturaleza es amoral, y no olvidemos que existe la tríada oscura de donde están los psicópatas, el sadismo y otros que mencionó, que incluyen, están incluidas en la neurodiversidad. Los humanos son morales y es nuestra obligación moral el crear nichos que se acomoden a todos, que incluyan a todos. Este tipo de positivismo tóxico no ayuda mucho, porque algunos de los nichos que hay también cumplen con un rol. No nos olvidemos al incluir este tema de la tríada oscura, de que se deben hacer muchas reformas al sistema de justicia y hacer que las cárceles sean menos punitivas. Se está haciendo bastante al respecto, especialmente un grupo de amigos en Inglaterra que se llama El Genio Dentro, Genius Within, que es una empresa muy conocida, en la cual porque hay muchas personas aparentemente en la cárcel que terminan siendo autistas o que están dentro de este rango. Thank you, Judy, go ahead.
So now I'm going to move on to the neurodiversity movement. So it's an umbrella movement for people with labeled neurological conditions. So far, that's what it's seen as. Their families, their allies, and professional helpers, if they want to be involved, it's important to know that it is decentralized and leaderless and has no leader and no official spokesperson.
Quiero hablar del movimiento de la neurodiversidad, que es un movimiento de paraguas, en el cual están las personas que han sido etiquetadas con condiciones neurológicas, sus familias, aliados y profesionales que contribuyen o ayudan. Es un movimiento descentralizado, que no tiene un líder y no posee un vocero oficial. Go ahead.
The movement is actually it's happening in cyberspace. It's really a kind of global language, or becoming a global language, a global conversation. And what it boils down to is the neurodiversity movement is anybody who's talking about neurodiversity, whether they like it or not. Even if they're against it, they're still part of the movement. It's because of all the weight of discourse and discussion that governments and institutions are forced to change because of the pressure of this discourse.
One second. El movimiento, de hecho, es más bien un tipo de lenguaje global. Se está convirtiendo en eso. Es una conversación global que se suscita. Y cualquier persona que esté hablando del tema de la neurodiversidad pasa a ser parte del movimiento, ya sea que hable de manera positiva o de manera negativa. Y este discurso es lo que está haciendo que los gobiernos y las entidades tengan que hacer algo al respecto, porque está presente, existe. Go ahead.
So I'm often asked, can I join the neurodiversity movement? And my answer is always that if you have been oppressed because of your neurological difference, then start talking about it and you become part of the movement, because really the movement is for people who have been oppressed by their difference. So, you know, people say, I've been just diagnosed with this. I think someone we happen to know has asked me this recently. And I say, if you've been oppressed, start speaking.
Muchas veces se me pregunta, ¿cómo me uno al movimiento? ¿Cómo puedo ser parte del movimiento? Y yo les respondo que si se les ha evaluado y con el resultado diciendo de que eres una persona que es parte de la neurodiversidad, que lo hablen, que hablen al respecto, y eso ya les hace automáticamente ser parte del movimiento. Okay, Judy.
Thank you. That's it. So now I think you have one more question.
Ya, creo que eso es, y hay una pregunta más. I will ask the question in Spanish, okay?
As you hoped, that one. Yeah.
¿Cómo sería el futuro ideal? ¿Cómo se vería el futuro ideal? The ideal future, Judy.
No, we missed one. Sorry.
Okay, no, faltaba otra. Voy a preguntar.
It was part of the topic, how the movement has changed. And
¿Cómo ha cambiado el movimiento?
I'm going to move through this quickly.
Go ahead. I'm sure your answer will include the question in a way.
So I think I'll just turn off, I don't know, pause this or something. Okay, it doesn't matter. So basically, there are positives and negatives. There's been widespread adoption by business and government, education and health, public sector and private sector diversity policies, and selling the idea that neurodiversity in the workplace can be a win-win competitive advantage. I don't just translate this. It's not that important what I say. If you just translate what's on the...
Okay.
We're running out of time.
No, we're okay. Yes, she's saying that we must be closing. Bueno, existen factores positivos y factores negativos, por ejemplo, adoptarlo, la neurodiversidad en los negocios, en el sector público y privado. Se habla de que la neurodiversidad en el trabajo en el fondo es una situación de win-win en el que todos ganan, y me pidió que leyera esto porque son los logros que ha tenido el movimiento. Los voy a leer rápidamente. Desafiar las dicotomías simplísticas sobre las mentes humanas, develar la modalidad de déficit médico, enfatizar las fortalezas tanto como las debilidades, cambiar las percepciones culturales y lo que significa ser un humano, reducir el estigma, el que las neurominorías ya no son parte del juego justo, no son parte del juego. El vender la idea de la neurodiversidad en el lugar de trabajo puede ser una ventaja competitiva de que todos ganan, el cambiar que el sector público y privado, que las políticas de diversidad del sector público y privado están cambiando, y el orgullo de la neurodiversidad. Todos estos son logros. Okay, Judy.
Okay. And now we're going to move on to the negatives. And I love negatives because that's why I'm a sociologist. I love to criticize. So here we go.
Y aquí vamos a hablar de los negativos, lo cual me encanta hablar de lo negativo porque me encanta criticar, por eso soy socióloga.
So, I'm going to talk about the three terrible C's: controversies, conflicts, and critiques. So first of all, there was a DSM-5. If you use the DSM-5 in South America, I don't know, but it's very influential here. And it defines what autism is. And they made a disastrous decision, first because they created Asperger's syndrome by putting it in the DSM-4, and then they decided to take it out and roll it into classic autism. Asperger's is kind of an identity shading into a disability. Classic autism is a very high support needs thing. And I know that there's a lot of discussion about that, but I won't go into that area of whether they are the same thing. Personally, I don't think they are. The definition is so broad now that it's starting to become a little bit meaningless, and it causes a lot of conflict because people who live with severe autism or can or can't speak for themselves feel that they are being pushed out by what is trendy middle class identity politics for people who've got careers and all the rest of it. And I certainly sympathize with that. Then there's all the arguments about language. Is it diverse, typical versus divergent, different or dominant? My preferred language is actually a neuro minority, which emphasizes that we're talking politics here. And finally, the big business takeover of neurodiversity, which I've talked before about what I call the commodification of neurodiversity. And I should say that I think this idea, this commodification, is a double-edged sword. It cuts both ways.
Okay. Acá estas son las controversias básicamente. Ya mencionó el DSM-5. No sabe si acá en Latinoamérica se utiliza, pero es lo que define el autismo, que allá se utiliza mucho. Que bueno, dentro de esta clasificación crearon el Asperger y que luego lo tuvieron que sacar y lo metieron en el saco del autismo clásico. Así que cae en gran discusión eso. También fue como pasando por las viñetas que hay acá de la diapositiva, de manera general. Las personas que viven, por ejemplo, con autismo severo sienten que se les empuja en otra categoría, en que también existen las personas con un autismo que no es tan severo, que tiene que ver con un concepto político más bien, y después está el tema del lenguaje, en el cual a mí la palabra que más me acomoda es el de neurominoría, que enfatiza esta conversación política. Y también, bueno, anteriormente yo he hablado de este concepto de comodificación, que tiene que ver de la neurodiversidad y que en el fondo solo puedo decir que es como una espada de doble filo. Go ahead, Judy.
So what I mean by commodification, and I think most people here know it anyway, is the process of turning something or someone into a commodity that can be bought or sold. And it is a double-edged sword. The positive is that liberal democracy has unleashed more freedom to be different and more creativity and fulfillment than any other system. Current political national system anyway. The foregrounding of neurodiversity and the promotion that they give it creates even more pathways to creativity and fulfillment than we dreamed of just a few years ago. The negative, first if you want to translate that.
No, please tell me the negative.
So the negative, well, this is about the workplace. You know, there's still a people talk about neurodiversity in the workplace as if it's like utopia. Well, the workplace is for most people a place of exploitation, dehumanization, where people are expected to work like machines and machines are expected to work like people. They lose sight. There's a lot of, businesses have a lot of, they now have to virtue signal to put, neurodiversity in as a box to tick. And sometimes it is well-intentioned. There are very good intentions there. But unfortunately, from my point of view, most of the jobs that are being created are for male computer programmers. And there has never been a shortage of male computer programmers in big business. So has anything really changed? So basically, it's something that needs a lot more regulation.
Mm-hmm. Do you mean by that, by there being male programmers, that it is something that is typical prejudice?
It seems to be because when I look at the brochures of these big companies that hire, and they show beautiful pictures of all the neurodivergent people they've hired, they're nearly always male. And what I want to see from regulation is that these companies, when they put out their glossy brochures, they need to put out how they deal with intersectionality and gender in the first place. How many women have they tried? What other kinds of jobs that women tend to excel in? Are they looking for women are wonderful communicators, all sorts of things, not just IT people? And I talk because I was an IT person, being on the spectrum, I was good at it.
Okay.
But a lot of women, and I'm thinking about the women I know who are neurodivergent. They're often writers, not
IT personnel. ¿Qué quiero decir con esto de la comodificación? Me refería al término en el cual alguien se convierte en un commodity que se puede comprar y vender. Entonces esto tiene su lado positivo, su lado negativo. Por el lado positivo tiene la creatividad, el explotar la creatividad y llenar este espacio. Y por otro lado, por el lado negativo, se puede considerar la neurodiversidad en el lugar de trabajo como una utopía, porque la verdad es que la mayoría de las personas, el lugar de trabajo es un lugar donde se explota, en donde se deshumaniza, donde se espera que la persona funcione como máquina y la máquina como persona. Y muchas veces tienen una cajita, digamos, las empresas, en donde uno pone un visto bueno que dice que hay una integración de personas o de la neurodiversidad, perdón. Y esto generalmente tiene buenas intenciones, pero no sé hasta qué punto, porque, por ejemplo, siempre lo que se ve cuando ponen un folleto en el que se habla de la neurodiversidad en las empresas, lo que se ve es un hombre y un informático hombre en una empresa. Y me gustaría ver algo más que eso, me gustaría ver en sus brillantes folletos más interseccionalidad, en términos de cuántas mujeres están trabajando, cuántas mujeres que son excelentes comunicadoras, por ejemplo, tienen un lugar. Lo digo yo porque generalmente las personas en el área de neurodiversidad somos buenos en informática. Yo lo hacía, por eso se los digo. Okay, Judy.
Okay, so now I think the next question was, I'm very quickly going to try and say something about the future, because I know it's late. So
yes,
this is what I wrote on my, this is what I've written on my Twitter page, describing myself. I'm not here to make capitalism more efficient, but more humane. And I think the neurodiversity movement is like forcing away, putting a thin end of the wedge in, because now they're starting to think more about individual needs. And I think, sure, other people have talked about the fact that everyone benefits, not just people who are neurodivergent. So moving on to the future, I've got no slide, but I just want to say that I think we need to, first of all, we will be moving away from a label-based system, which is really an artifact of the welfare system. Like if you want support or you want services or physio or whatever you want, you have to stick to the label. And it forces people to reduce themselves and be sort of stereotypes. So we need to move to a needs-based welfare system. That's the first one. You cannot have, when corporations ask me what they can do to make for neurodivergent employees, I don't tell them a whole bunch of tips and ideas. I just say, pay your taxes in the countries that you make them and talk to your friends and cronies in politics to bring about social change. And the changes we need are more housing, very important, a universal basic wage, because the workplace is a zero-sum game. A neurodivergent person may get it, but someone else misses out and ends up on this terrible punishment of welfare. And finally, I've forgotten. Oh yes, I talked about it before. Reform of the jail protective custody system. And that sums it up. And here's my final slide, I think. Except I don't have it. Never mind.
Can I see the last one again so that I can read? Even though I wrote it here, bueno, en relación al futuro de la neurodiversidad, yo escribí esta declaración o esta frase en mi cuenta de Twitter, creo, en la que dice: no estoy aquí para hacer que el capitalismo sea más eficiente, solo más humano. Así que pensando en el futuro, mirando hacia el futuro, solamente quiero decir que tenemos que alejarnos de las etiquetas, de los rótulos, en el que hace que las personas tengan que regirse o ceñirse a etiquetas, lo que hace que estén estereotipadas. Cuando las corporaciones, las empresas me preguntan a mí qué podemos hacer para acercarnos al concepto de neurodiversidad, yo les digo que paguen sus impuestos y hablen con sus amigos los políticos para traer cambio social a los países, básicamente en el tema de habitacional, en que haya un sueldo mínimo digno, en las pensiones y en reformas en las cárceles para proteger las condiciones dentro de ellas. Eso básicamente. Okay,
thank you. I don't know how you do it. You are fantastic.
Me agradece, dice que no sabe cómo lo hago, que soy fantástica.
Can I say what my final slide that I
please.
Somehow said, because it's really how I like to end. And I think that the bottom line of neurodiversity is a very old, obvious sociological, political statement by a French socialist in the 19th century, which everyone knows. It's the diversity ideal is to each according to their, from each according to their ability, to each according to their needs. That's what an ideal society strives for. We can't reach it, but we've got to keep trying to meet people's needs in the way that they need them.
Voy a hablar de, bueno, no lo tenía como diapositiva, aunque pensé que lo tenía, pero así me gusta terminar, y es que la idea final de la neurodiversidad, como lo dijo un francés en el siglo XIX que todos conocen, la diversidad ideal va de cada cual de acuerdo a las habilidades, a ver, de nuevo para decirlo bien, la diversidad ideal va de acuerdo a la habilidad de cada cual y a las necesidades de cada cual. Entonces lo que tenemos que hacer es tratar de adaptarnos para cumplir con las necesidades de cada uno. Eso básicamente. Okay, Judy.
Thank you so much.
we are going to close, and they're asking me to tell you that they're going to give you an honoris causa.
Wow.
I don't
I'm
know if
sorry.
Lorena is going to say something about that,
I'm
but
sorry, I didn't have time for leave you time for questions.
lo siente de no haber dejado tiempo para preguntas. I'm certain they're going to send them to you by email. So
I'd be very happy if they
le
did.
digo que quizás se las van a enviar por email y dice que estaría contenta de recibirlas.